The broken signal and the silent girl the moon was dead silent, except for the static in Jake Wren's helmet. Dust swirled around his boots as he moved carefully over the jagged rocks. His ship scanner had picked up a faint distress signal, something old and damaged, blinking on and off like a dying heartbeat. Most soldiers would have ignored it. After all, this part of the moon was marked as abandoned nothing but ash, bones, and old war tech. But Jake wasn't like most soldiers. He adjusted his helmet and followed the weak signal deeper into the canyon. That's when he saw Eta Small. Alien escape pod, half buried in the ash. The outer shell was cracked, blackened by fire. It looked like it had crash-landed years ago, maybe during the last phase of the war. Most pods were looted or broken. But this one had movement. Jake's heart skipped. He raised his rifle and stepped closer. A narrow window at the front of the pod was fogged over, but something inside moved something small. Base, this is Wren. I found a pod, possibly occupied. No sign of weapons. Static answered him. Useless. Jake took a deep breath, pressed the emergency override panel, and forced the hatch open with a hiss. Inside, curled in a tight ball, was a young alien girl. She was thin, almost too thin. Her skin was pale purple, with soft bioluminescent patterns glowing across her arms and cheeks. Her clothes were torn, and a small collar around her neck blinked red, some kind of broken translator. Her eyes snapped open when Jake stepped in, wide and wild with fear. She tried to crawl back, but there was nowhere to go. "It's okay," Jake said, holding up both hands. "I'm not here to hurt you." Of course, she didn't understand. Her body shook like she expected pain. Jake knew this look. He had seen it in war survivors before. Not just fear trauma. She was too young to be a soldier, maybe 10 or 12 in human years. "A child, can you move?" he asked, slowly reaching forward. The girl stared at him for a long second, and then nodded. Barely, Jake pulled a thermal blanket from his pack and wrapped it around her fragile form. She flinched at the touch, but didn't resist. He gently lifted her out of the pod. Her body was light to light, starved, dehydrated. She hadn't eaten in days, maybe more. "Let's get you somewhere safe." He carried her back across the sharp rocks, step by careful step, constantly looking over his shoulder. He didn't trust the silence of this moon. Finally, they reached his small scout ship. He laid her on the medical bed and locked the ramp shut behind them. The ship hummed to life. Jake set a course back to forward base Vega. He checked the girl's vitals, barely stable. Her body temperature was low, her heartbeat uneven. He opened a protein bar and offered it to her. She sniffed it, unsure. "Food," he said. "Eat." She nibbled slowly, watching him like a trapped animal, unsure if the hunter had just smiled or shown his teeth as they flew. Jake sent a message to Dr. Lin at the base. "Found alien juvenile survivor. Translator broken. No name, no known species. Trauma signs extreme. Needs medical and psychological help." Bringing her in, the reply was quick. "We'll be ready. Just be careful. We don't know what she is." Jake glanced at the girl again. She wasn't just an alien. She was silent, trapped in her own mind. And yet, something about her stayed with him. The way she had looked at him. Like part of her had recognized something human in him. As the stars blurred past the cockpit, Jake leaned back and closed his eyes. He didn't know why he'd risked his mission to save her. He just knew one thing. She was alive. And maybe she still had something to say. Asterisk the Neuralink experiment. Base smelled like disinfectant and metal. As Jake carried the alien girl through the entrance doors of Forward Base Vega, soldiers stared. Some paused mid-conversation. A few reached for their sidearms, eyes narrowing. "Stand down," Jake growled. She's a child. Look at her. She kept her head down, blanket clutched tightly in her small hands. Her feet didn't touch the floor. She didn't make a sound. Dr. Lin met him in the med bay. She wore her usual lab coat, a nervous expression. Under her glasses, is she safe? She hasn't spoken. Can't, translators busted. Jake explained. She hasn't hurt anyone. She's terrified. Lin examined the girl gently. Severely undernourished. Dehydrated. She has neural scarring. Mental trauma. Our nervous system's overloaded. Something scared her half to death. Jake nodded. That's why I brought her to you. You work on experimental neural links, right? Emotional resonance tech. Dr. Lin hesitated. Jake, that tech's not approved for aliens. It hasn't been tested across species. No, he said. But she needs help. And maybe this is the only way she can talk. The girl flinched at the raised voice. Jake lowered his tone. Please. Lin looked at the silent girl, then at Jake. We'll try. But if anything goes wrong, I'm pulling the plug immediately. They placed the girl on a soft bed inside the resonance chamber. Her eyes flicked to every movement, every sound. Like a hunted animal, Jake sat across from her, placing the neural headset around his own temples. Lin adjusted the girl's smaller headset, careful not to hurt her. This will create a temporary link, Lin explained. Thoughts, emotions. No words, just impressions. Be calm, or you'll scare her even more. Jake nodded. Ready? The chamber dimmed. The machines powered on. A soft hum filled the room. The lights on the neural pads blinked in sync. For a moment, nothing. Then, nah. Shockwave of fear slammed into Jake's chest. He gasped, clutching the sides of his chair, cold. Darkness, metal walls. Screaming that wasn't hers, but others. So many others. Jake saw flashes of cages, needles, pale, cruel eyes. Shadows pulling her from a group of small alien children. She had fought back, but no one had come. The memories weren't clear, but the pain was. Jake felt her terror like it was his own. But then, the fear faded. Something warmer pushed through the Lin curiosity. She was seeing him now. A moment passed. Then another image. A question. She showed him a memory his own. He blinked in surprise. She had pulled it from his thoughts. It was him. Younger, laughing with his sister in the rain on Earth. She was imitating animals. Slipping in the mud, both of them howling with joy. The alien girl had paused on that memory, watching it over and over. Replaying it, she didn't understand. The feeling was alien to her. Jake reached out, not with words. Thoughts. That's laughter. She didn't respond. But she didn't pull away either. Then another image hit him, sharp and sudden, her own memory. A tiny alien child reaching for something warm, something soft, only to be yanked away by metal hands. Jake clenched his jaw. She had never known joy, never known comfort. And yet, she was trying to understand. An hour later, they shut down the Link. Jake sat on the bench outside the med chamber, wiping sweat from his forehead. She's been through hell, he whispered. Dr. Lin stood beside him. You stabilized her. Your presence gave her a pattern. She followed your emotions. That's rare. She may trust you now, in some strange way. Jake nodded. We need to fix her translator. And find out where she came from. Do you have a name for her? Lin asked softly. Jake looked through the medbay window. The alien girl sat curled up under a heat lamp. Blanket around her shoulders, eyes blinking slowly. Not yet, he said. But I think she's about to get one. Back in the medbay, Jake returned to the girl's side. She looked up at him, calm now, still cautious but not afraid. He sat on the edge of the bed. "You okay?" he whispered, knowing she wouldn't answer. Still, she tilted her head like she understood. He pulled out a small data tablet and played a clip from a group of kids playing in a park, laughing. The girl's eyes widened again. She didn't look afraid. She looked confused. She touched her chest, then pointed at the sound. Jake smiled. That's what life should feel like. The first shared emotion, the video played again. Laughter echoed through the med bay speakers, pure, bright, and full of life. The alien girl watched closely. Her glowing eyes narrowed slightly, as if trying to understand something just out of reach. Jake sat beside her, keeping his distance. He didn't want to startle her. The children in the video were running through a sprinkler on a sunny day. Water splashed, faces beamed, and high-pitched giggles filled the air. To a human, it was normal. To her, it was alien. She tilted her head again, then looked at Jake. "Laughter," he said, tapping his chest. "It comes from here, from happiness." She blinked. Slowly, she raised a hand and touched her own chest. Something flickered in her expression, confusion. Mixed with curiosity, Jake tried something new. He replayed the same memory she had seen through the neural link. His younger self and his sister in the rain, laughing without a care in the world. But this time, he said the word again. Laughter. The alien girl flinched, but only slightly. Then she stared into the screen as though trying to feel what she saw. Jake leaned closer. "Can you feel it? Even a little?" For a long time, she didn't move. Then she let out a strange, rough sound, like a cough, then a wheeze. Jake froze. It came again. Short, sharp, broken, but this time there was rhythm. A trembling, stuttering burst of sound from deep in her chest. He blinked in disbelief. She wasn't choking. She was laughing. Her body shook slightly, uncertain, as if it didn't know how to handle the new emotion. But her eyes, those wide, glowing eyes, shimmered with something new, something alive. Jake laughed gently with her. "That's it. That's laughter." She looked surprised, like she had made a mistake, but when she saw him smiling, she copied the sound again, softer this time. Almost musical. Dr. Len, watching from the glass window, gasped behind her notepad. Jake whispered, "You've never felt this before, have you?" The girl didn't answer, but her fingers touched the screen again, playing the sound of children laughing. She closed her eyes and smiled. Later that evening, Jake returned to the lab to check on her. The base had calmed down, no alarms, no interruptions. The alien girl now sat on a low medical bench, wrapped in her blanket, looking at the stars through a small observation window. Jake placed a small translator patch on the table. It wasn't perfect, but it could help bridge the gap until the full device was fixed. He pointed at the patch. "Want to try it?" She looked at it, hesitant, then nodded. He placed it gently near her collar. It buzzed once and flickered on, scanning her vitals. "Testing connection," Jake said. The translator gave a soft beep. "Testing, testing," Jake repeated. The girl sat still. Then softly, a robotic voice translated her thought. "Testing." Jake's heart jumped. She was trying. She stared at him, then slowly moved her lips. Another beep, laugh. "Tur." Jake chuckled. "That's right. You're getting it." She touched her chest again, where her heartbeat was steady. Then she said, through the translator, "Feels light." Jake tilted his head. "What feels light?" "Here." She pressed her hand to her chest again. "Inside." Jake's chest tightened. "Yeah," he said. "That's what laughter does." But their quiet moment didn't last. The base alarm rang out sharp, urgent. Jake jumped to his feet. Red lights flashed across the medbay. A voice shouted through. "The CUM system, unidentified ship approaching base perimeter. Stealth class, no IFF code." Jake turned to the girl. She had frozen. Her body was trembling again. Then in a whisper through the translator, "They're here." Jake's blood ran cold. "Who?" he asked. "Who's here?" "The ones who took us. Who hate the sound." Grabbed his sidearm. "You mean the Holocan?" She nodded. "They don't feel. They don't laugh. They hate those who do." Outside, shadows moved beyond the base, walls silent and fast. Jake locked the medbay door and turned to her. "We'll keep you safe, I promise." But deep down, he knew this wasn't over. The Holocan weren't just hunting. They were coming to silence her, and the sound of her. New laughter, her first joy, had just painted a target on both of them. Asterisk. The hunters from her past, the base lights flickered. Alarms kept blaring. Every hallway echoed with sharp metallic footsteps and the clicks of soldiers arming up. Jake held the girl's hand as they moved through the back corridor of the medical wing. She didn't resist, but she didn't speak either. She didn't have to. The fear in her glowing eyes said enough. "Stay close," Jake whispered, glancing over his shoulder. "No matter what happens, don't let go." Outside, security drones had picked up movement, but nothing on the radar. That was the Holocan's specialty. They didn't march in like armies. They slipped in like smoke in the dark. And they didn't kill out of anger. They killed because they felt nothing at all. Jake tapped into the comms. "Dr. Lin, we're evacuating the girl. Secure the lower tunnel access." The reply came with static. "Copy that. They're cutting through." The upper decks. 3 officers already down. They're inside. The girl tugged Jake's sleeve. Her voice through the translator was barely a whisper. "They smell laughter." He looked down. "What Holocan?" "They track emotions. Laughter is like fire to them." Jake's blood chilled. "How do you know that?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pressed her fingers to her temple and the neural link flared on. Weak but active dot images rushed into Jake's mind. A long hallway. Metal walls. Children laughing in a hidden corner, trying to stay warm. Then shadows arrived. The Holocan, tall, faceless. Gray, they moved without sounding when they reached the children. The laughter stopped. Forever, Jake snapped out of the vision, heart pounding. He looked at her, stunned. "You survived when the others didn't." She nodded, trembling. "Because I never laughed." They reached the lower level, a tunnel used for emergency escape pods. The lights here were dim, flickering as if even the base itself was afraid. A security panel blocked the way. Jake keyed in his clearance. Come on. The girl stepped closer, and then she stopped. Her head slowly turned. Jake followed her gaze and saw it. A figure at the far end of the tunnel. Not running, not walking, just standing. Watching, its body shimmered like liquid metal. No eyes, no mouth. But it turned its head in. They both felt it, a pressure inside their minds. Cold and empty. A presence that didn't understand pain. Or joy. It was a hollow kin. Jake drew his weapon. Back up. But the Holokin didn't attack. It simply stepped forward, slow and silent. The girl whispered, "It wants me." Jake placed himself between them. "Over my dead body." The Holokin raised a hand, not to strike but to project something. A voice. Hollow and distant, echoed in the hallway. Emotion is infection. Joy is noise. You are broken. Return. Be purified. Jake fired. The blast hit the Holocan straight in the chest, but it just stood there, like it didn't even notice. It didn't scream. It didn't bleed. It didn't care. Jake grabbed the girl's hand. Run. They bolted down the corridor, the Holocan moving after them, smooth, fast, gliding over the floor like vapor. Dr. Lin opened the final door ahead, waving, "Here." This way? They dived through the door as Lynn sealed it behind them with a plasma weld. They huddled in a storage room deep below the base. The girl sat against the wall, knees pulled to her chest, breathing fast. Jake crouched beside her, checking his weapon. Only 2 charges left. Are there more of them? Lynn asked. The girl slowly nodded. They never hunt alone. Jake turned to Lynn. Why do they want her? She's not just any alien child. Lynn replied, voice low. She's a witness. She escaped. And now she knows laughter. The girl spoke again, voice shaking. They want silence. Forever? Jake looked at her. In that moment, he realized she was the opposite of them. They were empty. She had just taken her first step into emotion, into life. He reached out and took her hand again. You're not going back to them? Ever. Suddenly, the lights snapped off. Complete darkness swallowed the room. A cold wind slipped through the cracks in the door. The Holokin were already here, but this time, Jake wasn't just going to run. He looked at the girl. Can you still access the neural link? She nodded. Then show me again, he said, whispering. Show me the laughter. Laughter as a weapon. The room was cold. Not just physically, but spiritually. Emotionless, like something vital had been sucked from the air. Jake held his breath, ears straining. The Holokin were near. He could feel it not through sound, but through absence. The silence felt wrong, like the universe had paused. The alien girl trembled beside him. But her eyes, those glowing eyes, were locked onto his. He nodded slowly. We're going to fight them, but not with weapons. She stared, confused. Jake activated the neural link. A soft hum filled the dark. Images flooded her thoughts. Memories of joy, of laughter, of music. Sunlight on Earth, rainy days in the park. Dogs chasing frisbees. A baby's first giggle. Emotion. Real. Human emotion. The girl blinked at her. Expression changed. She understood now. This wasn't just survival. This was a choice. Footsteps, if they could be called, that glided closer. The Holokin didn't make noise, but their presence pressed on the walls like crushing air from outside the room. A flat voice called, Cease. Surrender, the marked one. Her mind is unstable. She will be erased. It is mercy. Jake looked at the girl. You ready? She didn't speak. Instead, she smiled. Not fully, not confidently. But enough. Then, from her lips an alien sound bubbled up. It was rough. It was cracked, but it was laughter. The sound echoed through the neural link, then through the room, then through the base. Not a scream, not a cry. A laugh. It wasn't a weapon of war. It was something purer. And the Holokin recoiled. Outside the sealed room, the Holokin twitched. They didn't understand the sound. They didn't feel it. But to them, it was chaos. Disorder, color in a world. They had worked to drain into black and gray. One took a step back. Another trembled slightly. Inside the room, the girl laughed again, louder this time. Her whole body shook, eyes wide, chest rising and falling fast. Jake didn't know whether she was laughing or crying. Maybe both. But he saw something incredible. She wasn't afraid anymore. Suddenly, one Holokin launched forward, phasing through the wall. Jake fired his last plasma shot. It hit the creature's center mass, and it staggered. It didn't fall. But it shuddered like the emotion behind the shot had shaken it. Her laughter was still pouring from the neural link like a song of defiance. The Holokin raised a hand to strike her. She stepped forward. Her voice, through the translator, rang out like a bell. You can't erase me. I feel now. And I will never stop feeling again. The Holokin froze mid-motion, and then it cracked. A thin, ragged line appeared across its body, as if something inside had fractured. Jake watched in awe as the creature began to flicker, light leaking from the seams like it was splitting. From within, a motion had ruptured its core. The rest of the holokin didn't retreat. They screeched not with sound, but with rage that vibrated through metal and bone. They began smashing through walls, cutting through corridors. Determined to silence her, Jake grabbed her hand. "Let's go. Now." Dr. Lin opened a side door leading to the emergency launch chute. A pod sat ready. One seat, one small storage. Unit. Jake looked at Lin. "I'll take her. I can pilot." Lin nodded. "We'll cover your launch, but once you're out, you'll be on your own." The girl turned back as she stepped into the pod. Jake followed but paused. He looked back at the base, his home for 3 years, and at the enemies they couldn't kill with bullets, but only with something the galaxy had forgotten: laughter. The launch was fast. The pod blasted into the cold sky, streaking past crumbling towers and into the stars. Jake buckled the girl in. She stared through the small window, watching the base grow smaller behind them. Then she turned to him. "Is it over?" Jake shook his head. "No, but we've started something." "You did." She thought for a moment, then whispered, "I was empty, like them, until I met you." Jake smiled. "You were never like them. You just didn't know what joy felt like." She looked away and then laughed again. This time, not awkwardly. Not like a foreign sound, but like it belonged to her. Asterisk escape and the firestorm. The stars stretched endlessly outside the pod's window, like cold diamonds scattered across ink. Inside, silence returned, but this time wasn't frightening. It was peaceful. The alien girl sat beside Jake, wrapped tightly in a thermal blanket. Her breathing had slowed. Her body no longer trembled. The fear that had lived inside her for so long was fading. But Jake wasn't relaxing yet. He tapped on the pod's console, scanning nearby space. The pod had limited fuel, and barely enough shielding. They had escaped the holokin, but for how long? "Where do we go?" she asked through the translator, her voice soft. Jake sighed. "We can't go to any official colonies. If they find out who you are, they might lock you away. Or worse." She turned to him, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "Because I laughed?" Jake smiled bitterly. "Because you survived them, and now you carry something dangerous, hope." She lowered her head. "Then, are we dangerous?" He looked at her carefully. "To them, yes. To the holokin, joy is a virus. But to us, you're a miracle." She didn't respond, but she leaned gently against his shoulder. It wasn't much, but it was more human than most people he knew. Hours passed. A signal blinked on the radars. Mall, faint, distant. A research station orbiting a mining planet. Civilian run, no military presence. "All right," Jake muttered. "It's risky, but we don't have a choice." He adjusted the pod's trajectory, aligning with the station's gravity. But as the pod turned, the girl's eyes widened. From her seat, she saw the planet below. It was burning. A streak of fire split across the surface. Whole sectors glowed red. Thick clouds of smoke curled into space. Jake's hands flew across the controls. "What the hell?" The console flickered. A message came through, crackling and broken. "Station under attack. Holokin vessels detected. Requesting immediate evac. Civilians trapped." Jake's heart dropped. "They followed us." Girl gripped his hand. Jake stared at the console. He could change course, run, hide in deep space. But the girl's voice, barely a whisper, changed everything. "They're hurting others. Like they hurt me." He made his choice. "We're not running," Jake said, locking the pod into a manual dive. "We're going to help." They entered the planet's orbit under cover of debris clouds. Fires lit up the atmosphere. Jake could see the outlines of Holocan drones moving across ruined settlements, silent machines sweeping through ash and wreckage. The research station's landing pad was half-dashed destroyed. Jake guided the pod down through smoke and wind. The girl held tight to the chair. Not out of fear, but determination. She no longer looked like someone hiding from the past. She looked like someone stepping into it. They touched down near the edge of the station. Done inside. Civilians were huddled in the main control center, terrified, confused, and armed with nothing but flashlights and old tools. When Jake stepped in with the girl, the room fell silent. Whispers spread. Is that one of them? She's with a human. He's military. Is she Holocan? Jake raised a hand. She's not with them. She's the reason I'm alive. And if you want to survive, listen to her. The girl stepped forward. She activated the neural link, focusing on one emotion. Warmth. The civilians flinched as her energy washed over them. Not pain, not fear, but something gentle. Comfort. That's when the station shook. A Holocan drone burst through a rear cord, her metal limbs slicing through the wall. The civilians screamed and ducked behind consoles. Jake raised his weapon. Now. Charge. The girl stepped forward, unarmed. She looked at the creature, and she laughed. The drone halted. Its limbs twitched. Its body sparked. Her laughter grew louder, spreading through the neural link. The humans felt it tool like a pulse of light in a dark tunnel. One by one, the people around her began to smile, then chuckle, then laugh. It was wild, unplanned, human. The Holocan drone jerked once, then exploded into sparks and smoke. Emotion had short-circuited its mind. Jake stared. The girl turned to him, a small grin on her lips. See, she said. It's not just noise. Jake shook his head, laughing. No. It's a weapon. Her voice at last. The Holocan had retreated, not through defeat in battle, but through something far more confusing to them, emotion. The research station stood in stunned silence. People who moments ago were trembling in fear now looked at the young alien girl like she was a light in the smoke. Jake walked beside her through the damaged hallway, stepping over broken tiles and wires. She kept her eyes forward, posture taller than ever before. Not a prisoner, not a runaway. A survivor inside the command room. The station's remaining leader, weary man with soot on his uniform, stepped forward. Who is she? Jake placed a hand on her shoulder. She's the reason you're still alive. The girl looked around at the others. Their nervous expressions, their wondering stares. For the first time, she didn't flinch, didn't shrink. She spoke softly through the translator. I don't want to run anymore. Jake took her back to the ship a few hours later. The fires on the planet had died down. The station was safe for. Now, she sat in the co-pilot seat, hands folded, eyes locked on the starfield ahead. He turned to her. You need a name. She looked at him, thoughtful. I never had one. Jake smiled. How about Nira? She blinked. It means new dawn, he explained, in an old Earth language. She looked away for a moment, then nodded slowly. I like it, Nira. Nira. The girl who had been a number in a Holocan prison now had a name and a voice, even without the translator. Jake could feel her more clearly than words. The neural link stayed active. Not just for survival anymore, but for connection. They made contact with a human science fleet a week later. Unlike military or colonist groups, this crew was peaceful, focused on research and interspecies diplomacy. Jake and Nira were welcomed carefully. But when the neural logs were shared showing what the Holocan had done and how emotion had destabilized them, the fleet's scientists were stunned. You're saying One of them asked that they can be stopped with feelings. Jake shrugged with enough laughter. Maybe. Nira stood at his side. Laughter is not just noise. It's proof we're alive. The scientist smiled. She speaks better than most of us. They gave Nira safe quarters aboard the research vessel. Jake visited her often, though she was rarely alone now. She became a symbol. People came to see her, not to study, but to understand. They didn't see her as the alien girl anymore. They saw her as something more. Someone who had survived something that should have broken her, but instead, she had found joy. One night, Jake sat beside her in the observation deck. Stars drifted silently by. Nira looked at him, her translator turned off. She pointed at her chest, then touched his arm. Then smiled, no words needed. Jake grinned. I know. I feel it too. She tilted her head. Will others learn to feel again? Jake looked at the stars. They will. Because of you. Later, the humans aboard the fleet began developing safe versions of the neural linquens that could be taught. Used, shared joy became a weapon. Not to kill but to heal. To break the Holocan hold over scared worlds. And at the center of it all was Nira, the girl who once didn't know what laughter meant. Months later, on the edge of a new colony world, Nira stood before a crowd, hundreds of children and adults, alien and human. She held a small handheld projector. On it played the video of Jake and his sister laughing in the rain. Then Nira, without a translator, laughed. The sound echoed through the valley, clear, pure, real. The crowd joined her. Laughter filled the air, not as a joke, not as entertainment, but as a beginning. Back on the ship, Ashik watched from the screen. He smiled softly. She found her voice, Dr. Lin said beside him. Jake nodded. She found more than that.